seconds of regulation. The Minnesota Wild have won 4 in a row. John Hines remains perfect behind the Wild bench. As the Wild score early in the first, they tack on 2 more early in the second, and they cruise to a 5-2 win here tonight over the Flames in Calgary.
Welcome to a Thursday morning on KFAN. Kevin Falness in for Paul Allen and Eric Nordquist. Max Fuller is here as well. A fun few hours coming your way from 9 to noon here. And what better way to kick it off than dropping the puck on this 3-hour extravaganza with the president and general manager of the Minnesota Wild, Mr. Bill Guerin, joining us from parts unknown. Billy, how you doing?
I'm doing great this morning, Kevin. How are you?
I'm okay. Now, you could be in any of about 100 different places. Where are you currently?
Wayzata, Minnesota.
Oh, okay. So the Board of Governors is over. You're not on the road with the team. You're at home sweet home with your giant dog.
Yes, I am.
Awesome.
Yes.
How maybe let's start there. Well, no, let's start with your Minnesota Wild, because unbelievably, Billy, it hasn't even been 2 weeks. And the way things have changed so drastically in such a short amount of time, does it even catch you a little bit off guard?
Yeah, a little bit. Hey, look, like I said, I'm a big believer in John Hines and what he brings. And, you know, I've always been a big star player. So I think when you have guys that are as hungry as our players are to succeed, and then you have a coach that, you know, is bringing – you know, a new voice and different ideas, they're going to listen, and you know, hopefully they're enjoying it and having fun, and you know, I mean, winning's fun, so you know, they can continue to do it.
More on your team in a second. I know one of the things about your job, there's a lot of things that are really cool. One of the least fun things is telling a guy that he's cut and then having to let someone go, like a Dean Evison. I bet there's zero surprise in your mind, though, the way he's handled it since the firing a week ago, Monday, or whatever day it was, the way he's taken the high road on the way out the door.
Dean's one of the greatest guys I've ever met, and I guess I'm more, you know, it's amazing. I don't know how to express my feelings about, you know, about how he handled it. He's just amazing. And, you know, this is a tough business. It stinks at times to have to do that, but, you know, you really learn a lot about people when it's crunch time. And, you know, I guess the good thing is, too, after working so close with Dino for so long, you know, he's not going to be the coach for the Wild anymore, but, you know, he's still a good friend of mine, and that's important to me.
Well, his old squad is John Hines' new squad, and, you know, it's like you flip the switch, and I'm sure as a player, you've been a part of it many times in season coaching changes, and you get that honeymoon period, and it feels like this is more than just a honeymoon period. This team is now playing the way that you saw them play last year in good chunks where they piled up 100 points in the regular season and made their way into the playoffs. But what in particular have you noticed from John Hines in the 4 games that he's got under his belt?
I just think that he's gotten, you know, the team to play a lot faster, with a lot more speed. You know, the guys didn't just become faster skaters over, you know, the last couple days, week. It's just the way that they're coming out of our end and coming out with the puck and, you know, entering the offensive zone with speed, things like that. Just little differences here and there that make a big difference.
Was it only a matter of time before we saw this Matt Boldy? Because we know what he did last year, and especially with Kaprizov out of the lineup, he carried this team into the postseason. This year, obviously a rather slow start. You said it on the record. Dean Evison was definitely frustrated at the end of his era, and now Boldy gets 1. It follows with 2. He had a couple of goals the other night, and now he's got 4 goals in the last 4 games. Was it just a matter of time?
I don't think it was just a matter of time, because if you know, somebody didn't help him or things didn't go a different way, then it probably would have just kept going. So I know one of John's first things was to try to build confidence in the guys. And, you know, Matt's part of that group. And, you know, you see it in Kirill, you see it in Zuki, and you see it in Matt. And, you know, like I said, a lot of guys. But Matt was definitely a point of interest for John, and just trying to help build his confidence.
I don't know what Matt Zuccarello is drinking in his coffee on an everyday basis, but that guy, it does not age. He's kind of like Jared Spurgeon, but I'm talking about on the ice, Bill. When we look at Matt Zuccarello and what he's been able to do, I think he fed off Kirill Kaprizov. Now he's feeding off Marco Rossi. He likes those young guys on his line.
Yeah, well, you know what? Being an older player on a team, you need that youth around you, and it does keep you young, and it's fun. And, Zuki's always had, obviously great skill and great offensive hockey sense. He's competitive. And, 36 isn't, you still got some gas left in the tank. Not everybody does, but Zuki sure does. And he's been fantastic.
And speaking about Marco Rossi, it feels like Wild fans probably should have learned their lesson about patience and how key it is with Jules Eriksson-Ek a few years back. There were people who were saying he's never going to be more than a fourth-line center. He's a grinder. He's leading your team in goals. He's a guy that you can count on all the time, and it took a little time to get there. Maybe the same thing with Marco Rossi. You were preaching, let him go down to the American Hockey League and bake, and boy, the fruits of that patience are really paying off this year. He's maybe been your best forward.
Yeah, he's been one of the more consistent guys, that's for sure. It takes time. Everybody develops at a different pace, and they have to do different things. And the one thing I've always said about Marco is that he's extremely dedicated. He will do whatever it takes to be an impactful player in the NHL, and hopefully he's just going to continue to get better, because he's, it's night and day from last year. And he's been a big contributor for our team this year, and hopefully it can continue. How
do you keep this roll going? You've won 4 in a row, coming off that 7-game skid that we don't even like to think about anymore, but now all of a sudden this team has reversed their fortunes. You've won 4 in a row, including a nice victory to start this 4-game trip out west. How do you keep this going in through the rest of the road trip, and for that matter, the rest of the season?
Well, you know what? We have to make sure we know how to handle success and keep going. We can't get ahead of ourselves and think it's just going to be, us cruising along the rest of the year just because it's been a good 4 games. We've got to stay focused. We've got to keep learning new things from the new coach, keep playing together, and make sure we handle success the right way.
Talking to the general manager, president and general manager of the Minnesota Wild, Mr. Bill Guerin. Wild are in Vancouver tonight. Pregame starts at 8:45 right here on FM 100.3 The Fan. Puck drops just after 9 o'clock. Board of Governors meeting. I know that just concluded. Were you there? What'd you think? One thing that definitely came out of there that I think probably piqued your interest in the fact that the salary cap's going up 5% from 83.5 to 87.7 is what I hear that they're thinking there, Billy. That's good news, right?
Yeah, I wasn't there. I skipped that one. But I did get the news on that, and that to me as the general manager, that is good news. It just gives us a little more flexibility moving forward.
There was also some conversation about an in-season tournament. I think it's been successful for the NBA. I haven't paid much attention to it, but would you welcome something like that for the NHL if they think about going in that direction?
I don't know. I'm a little bit more of a traditionalist. I mean,
it's good. We got good hockey the way it is, right?
Trophy in sports. I don't know why we would add another one in. But hey, look, I'm open to anything that will help the game, help grow the game, help make it more exciting for our fans. And if that's the case, then yeah, I'll try anything. But I just love where the game's at right now.
Yeah, it's fun on an every night basis. Last night was a great example. Watch some great hockey, and you never know what to expect on a night in, night out basis. I'll let you go on this note. Over the course of this weekend, I had a conversation with a former teammate of yours. He's a former Minnesota Wild player, wore the number 34 here in Minnesota, and had tiny breezers. You won a cup with him in 1995 under Jacques Lemaire. Care to guess who I'm talking about?
Yeah, I know who you're talking about. Jersey Jim.
That's him. And from Brick, New Jersey, born on December 25th, Jim Dowd, the former Wild center. I asked him about you and your former line mate. What can you tell us about Jim Dowd and your time with him?
Jim is a great teammate. He really was. And we've known each other for so long and had known each other for a long time. Even back then, I mean, my God, and we played together that whole playoff run. And you know what, Timmy didn't care about personal stats or anything like that, and he'd always just say, you know, man, all I want to do is effing win. And that
sounds like him.
What Timmy was all about.
That sounds exactly like him. I did want to ask you about young Liam. I understand he dealt with a little bit of a calamity here lately. How's he coming along?
He's coming along just fine. He broke his wrist over the weekend during a game, and a plate and 7 screws. And but yeah, you know these young kids. They don't let that hold them back. He's out goofing around already. But thanks for asking. Yeah, he's doing great.
Well, good to hear. Hopefully we see him in the press box again when the Wild return back to XL Energy Center. I don't know what you have to do with the schedule. I'm going to guess virtually nothing. But how does this team go from Calgary to Vancouver to Edmonton to Seattle in this 4-game trip?
By plane.
Yeah. So it's not an excuse, you're saying.
You know what? Those guys, honestly, those guys at the league that do our schedule, they have one of the toughest jobs. And you know what? Look, you can't make everybody happy. And we're going to have times like this in our schedule, and so is every other team. And we're also going to have great things about our schedule. So, you know, hey, we'll accept it and just play the games. Yeah. I mean, look, we fly great. We stay in great hotels. We're spoiled. Hey, let's not complain. Let's just get on our charter plane and go to our nice hotel and eat our great meal. We'll be fine for the game. Let's not make a big deal of it.
Roll with the punches. Billy, thanks for doing this. And how will you take the action tonight? You going to stay up late and watch your team in action, or are you going to turn in early?
Yeah. No, I'll be sitting in my chair right in my family room and tuned in and just can't wait.
All right,
It'll
cool.
be a good test for us.
Awesome. Thanks for doing this. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. Have a good day, Kev.
There he is, the president and general manager of your Minnesota Wild, Bill Guerin. What a way to start off 9 to noon. Don't worry about playing your fancy charter jet and fly across country 4 different times and enjoy your nice meals and go to your nice hotel and just play hockey. It's that easy, Max Fuller, according to the president and general manager of the Minnesota Wild. He's as laid back as they come.
Yeah, Billy G is awesome, man. He's a stone cold gangster. And, I mean, I'm not saying that I'm biased or anything, but he did come into the fan one time and complimented my hair. So, as the biggest Wild fan in the Twin Cities, that really meant a lot to me, because you know how much this team means to me.
I really do know how much this team means to you.
Wild fan that I am.
Yeah, that's right. Well, we got an awesome show, I think, packed up. The next hour is pretty well open. We just had Billy on, and beyond that, we really pick up steam at the top of the hour, but it's going to be a lot of me and Max Fuller here for the next 40 minutes. And I think that means we're probably going to turn the conversation to Timberwolves action and maybe talk a little Vikings. I saw your FaceTime photo, whatever you had, you and Marnie and Mark Rosen. Of course, he doesn't come to St. Paul, but you guys sitting there on Media Row right there at center court.
Hey, it's the biggest show in town these days. It's ESPN. It was prime time, baby. When's the last time the Wild have been on ESPN, huh?
All the time. All the time, actually, Max. But what I noticed about that was that's the lowly Spurs that they had to eke out in the final stages of that basketball game. That was a little too close for comfort, wasn't it?
It was a little too close for comfort. I can't lie about that. That game was pretty ugly for about 85% of the game, but the Wolves turned it on in about the last 7 minutes or so and put them away. And that's a team that this Wolves team would have lost to in the past.
Yeah.
That's a 3-17 operation or something like that. They've lost something like 15 straight, which is somehow not the longest losing streak in the NBA, thanks to the Detroit Pistons, who are doing their due diligence to make sure Detroit kids learn how to count the old-fashioned way, 0-1, 0-2, 0-3, copyright the common man. So, yeah, that Spurs team is really bad, and the Wolves, they really struggled against the lowly teams last year, but they put them away.
They got the win. They've won 5 straight, and it's going to be a lot of fun to talk about that, not only with you, But at the top of the hour, Alan Horton, the play-by-play voice of the Minnesota Timberwolves. I've been such a huge fan of his work for so long. This will be the first time I've talked to him in person.
Yeah, what are some like deep basketball strategy things you want to talk to him about?
Oh, no, I'm going to ask him about his career and his life behind the mic. You guys want to talk X's and O's? Amen. Give it hell. Well, we're going to talk to Alan. He's going to be at about 10 o'clock later on that hour. How about Mike Mussman coming in studio? He didn't get to go to Vegas. He's stuck here. He's got studio host duties, and he's got his gig there with K102. So we're going to talk to him, and then the two of us are going to talk to former Vikings quarterback Tommy Kramer. Hey. He's in Vegas for the big game coming up on Sunday. Vikings taking on the Raiders. Of course, you'll hear that. The extended pregame starts at 1 o'clock here on FM 100.3 The Fan. The boom at noon, as PA calls it, will actually be at 3:05 on Sunday from Vegas, but Tommy Kramer's there on the field. We'll check in with him. We'll talk a little Golden Gopher hockey. I had a conversation with Carl Fish yesterday, and the senior defenseman is all smiles. Former roommates with Brock Faber, so we'll check in with him, and then we'll wrap things up the only way we can with Michael Russo of The Athletic and theathletic.com. So don't go anywhere. We're going to talk a little bit of everything. It ain't all hockey. For those of you that are all mad, Falness is on the air, I got to hear all this puck talk. No, there will be some puck talk, but we'll branch out a little bit, courtesy of Max Fuller and more, as we continue on KFAN.
Broadcasters Association.
Hey, it's Barrero. Catch me today on The Fan.
Follow The Fan this football season on Twitter and Instagram, and you could win $100 in gas money thanks to your local Chevy dealers. One winner will be chosen every Friday, brought to you by your select Heartland Chevy dealers. Find new roads.
What a run it's been for your Minnesota Wild. 4 straight victories, but how about those Minnesota Timberwolves?
8-point Timberwolves lead. Spurs won't foul. Greg Popovich with a wave to Chris Finch, and that will do it. The horn sounds here at Target Center. The Timberwolves rally in the second half to defeat the Spurs 102-94. It's win number 15 in the last 17 games. Best 17-game stretch in franchise history. In 35 years, the Timberwolves have never won 15 out of 17 until this magical 23-24 season.
Alan Horton, John Krasinski, Max Fuller, you're all so cocky right now on your side of the river. Look at you guys. I've never seen any of you smile this big night after night after night. And I did not think, like we talked about going into break there, Maxwell, I did not think there was going to be a whole lot of smiling from Timberwolves Nation when you were almost losing to the lowly San Antonio Spurs, but I give them full credit. That was a game they definitely could have folded up their tent and said, I'm going to take the night off. They didn't. And especially your guy, Rudy Gobert. Holy smokes.
Man, he has been on such a run over the last couple weeks. Finished last night, 16 points, 20 rebounds.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
My goodness. I don't know if he's playing with a little extra motivation, playing against his fellow Frenchman and Victor Wembanyama, which if the listeners remember, the first time we really actually saw Victor Wembanyama, a lot of us online, was when he was playing against Rudy Gobert one-on-one in that video that went viral, and he was giving him buckets. And Rudy's been great over the last couple weeks in general, and last night was just another great game, and they obviously wouldn't have even gotten close to winning it without him. He cleaned up a lot of the Wolves' bad shots. There was a lot of sloppy play on both ends of the ball for both teams. It was a really ugly affair for most, like about 3.5 quarters of that game.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, especially in the first half, there was foul trouble for Rudy Gobert. He didn't play a lot, and that's probably where it started to spiral a little bit out of control.
Yeah, he got into a little bit of foul trouble. The Wolves just had some really bad fouls. Him and Karl Anthony Towns. Karl Anthony Towns looked like he was more concerned about playing as like a prime Adrian Peterson last night than a basketball player. He was just barreling through folks. They made a couple costly turnovers, and they were really struggling against this Spurs team. Not a whole lot of offense, a really low-scoring game. But, yeah, we're starting to see over the certain games, we saw it against the Kings, we saw it against the Thunder, and now we saw it again last night, that the Wolves are struggling against talented guards without Jaden McDaniels on the floor, who's obviously their best defender, one of the best defenders in the NBA. Devin Vassell, who got a big contract over the summer, and a lot of people were wondering why. Well, he proved it last night. He had 22 points, and he was giving the Wolves hell last night, but they buckled down in that second half, and they got right to it, and shut the door on a team that has just 3 wins. And just last year, had the Wolves beaten teams like the Spurs, teams like the Pistons and the Rockets, they could have been a top 5 seed in the NBA, even with all the injury problems and struggles that they had integrating Rudy Gobert back into the team. So they're handling business this year and doing what they're supposed to do and beating bad teams.
Wolves fan line continues 9 to noon here on KFAN. Maxwell Fuller guiding the ship. In for Paul Allen. He and Nordo, of course, in Vegas getting ready for the Vikings and Raiders coming up on Sunday afternoon at 3:05. Of course, you got the return of Anthony Edwards, and I know that he may have been a little rusty early on. I saw a thunderous jam late in that hockey game.
Oh, man.
Hockey game.
How sweet was that?
I was trying to think of what my correlation would be to hockey. A big slam like that would be from between the circles, which you have no idea what I'm talking about.
Of course I do.
But just a great
clapper, classic clapper. Yeah. I mean, it happens on the blue line. Yeah. I mean,
that's right.
Yeah, of course.
Brian Ralston had a clapper on a penalty shot against Roberto Luongo back in the day, but I mean, he just threw down the thunder. So how did he look in his first game back from injury?
He didn't look all too great. I remember at one point he was something like 2 for 10. I don't have the stats right next to me, his shooting percentage right next to me to see how he ended up finishing the game. But it did seem like he kind of saved all of his energy for that fourth quarter because he started turning it on, and that dunk came out of nowhere. He hadn't been playing with the same type of aggressiveness that he usually plays with. You could tell that he didn't really have his legs under him, and I actually was curious to ask Alan next segment if he thinks that the Anthony Edwards will even play when they play against the Memphis Grizzlies, another lowly team, perhaps besides the Spurs and the Pistons, the worst team in the NBA without Ja Morant. But Ant found other ways to impact the game. 7 rebounds, 6 assists. He's just seeing the floor so well this season. He's seeing everything develop and getting the ball to the right places. So, he still made an impact, but definitely did not look like his same usual energetic and aggressive self. But hey, nobody on the team nobody was the guy yesterday. It was kind of more of a shared affair. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, about 5, 6 Timberwolves in double digits. So it was a group effort last night to beat the lowly Spurs.
They beat them. They run their record to 16-4, best record in the Western Conference. And as mentioned, they've won 5 in a row. So let me ask you this: their center court media row guy. They've won 16 of 20 games thus far.
Best start in Wolves history.
Yes, that's great. You've got. I'm going to say probably 4 choices, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. MVP, and you don't award MVPs through 20 games. So I'm just curious. Anthony Edwards is a stud. Rudy Gobert is playing on a level that he may not have even played when he was in Utah. You can correct me on that. Karl Anthony Towns, maybe even Mike Conley. Who's the MVP through 20 games?
Man, I'd probably have to say it's Rudy Gobert. Which
How about
is
that?
Kind of mind-blowing.
Can you imagine saying that last year when all of you guys wanted him dead and buried?
Yeah.
You gave up what to bring this guy here, and you just call him the MVP of this wonderful start.
I mean, he's been finding his spots offensively. Last year, he really struggled getting the ball offensively. He tried to do a lot of back to the basket stuff, which isn't really his game. He's finding the lobs this year. He's rim running, cleaning up on bad shots and stuff like that. And his defense, he's already a 3-time defensive player of the year, perhaps this year 4-time, because there was a week or 2 ago, there was a guy that had a wide open layup. He's going into the lane. Rudy Gobert appears and he completely aborts the layup. He didn't even attempt the shot. He just saw Rudy and was like, nope. And that's the type of things that aren't going to show up on the stat sheet I would imagine he's leading the league in blocks, or right around the top 5 leading the league in blocks. He's probably up there for rebounds as well. But there's so much more that doesn't show up on the stat sheets. He's covering for guys when there's blown coverages defensively. He's altering shots. He's been incredible. The anchor of the number 1 defense in the NBA. So I'd have to say it's Rudy Gobert. Anthony Edwards, obviously, he's a stud. He's a superstar. He's the driving force of this team. But there's been a couple nights that Anthony Edwards is still, I would say 9 times out of 10, he's going to give you his all. I'm not going to say he's not giving you his all. 9 times out of 10, he's going to give you that classic vintage Anthony Edwards type of game, but he still has to work on the consistency every single night. So I'd say it's Rudy Gobert is the MVP of this team. And Cat's been incredible. Mike Conley, you can't overstate how much he's added to this team with his maturity and just being able to kind of direct the floor, which is something D'Lo was absolutely not able to do last season and was a hindrance to the Wolves' success. But I'd have to say it's probably Rudy Gobert.
To me, you're the MVP of Media Row. And your awesome selfies, you and Marnie and Rosie sitting there having your champagne, center court, enjoying the festivities. Do you agree with Maxwell Fuller? Is in fact Rudy Gobert the MVP of the first 20 games of this awesome Timberwolves season? And what a wonderful start it's been. I've been an interested spectator, and maybe for the first time in my life. I remember J.R. Ryder, I remember Christian Laettner, and I remember a lot of real bad basketball between then and now. And I mean, honestly, congratulations to everybody who's enjoying the ride, because a lot of you, including the guy that I'm looking at on the other side of this glass, have watched this team flounder in the National Basketball Association. It's been terrible for so many years.
So long.
And as much as John Krasinski wants to make fun of Wild fans and how they hang their hat on that 2003 run to the Western Conference Finals, we kind of feel your pain. It's a lot more fun when they're winning, and that's what everyone's enjoying at this point. So is Rudy Gobert the MVP of this team through 20 games? What can you tell me about this Timberwolves team that I need to know? 800-320-5326. You can also text us, 64686. I'll figure out how to get the inbox going, booth@KFAN.com. We want your interaction here for the next half hour. At top of the hour, we got Alan Horton coming in. We're going to talk a little Vikings as well. We'll get into that. Josh Dobbs, is he the right guy under center? I have my questions. What about you? Do you feel like he's that can lead the Vikings to the promised land, including Sunday when they travel to Vegas to take on the Raiders? Anything and everything's on the table. Next on
The Fan.
Wild Wednesdays, sponsored by Jim Beam, a crowd pleaser since 1795, are here until January. Listen every Wednesday through December for your chance to win tickets.
I mean, this is the best I've ever seen him play. Obviously, I haven't seen him play every single night when he was in Utah, but this is the best I've seen him play on both ends of the ball. He's, really, of course, dominating defensively and offensively, and I think he's quite the force there too, playing with a lot of force on the offensive end. Yeah, this is the best I've ever seen him play.
Unmistakable voice of Chris Finch, head coach of the 16-4 Minnesota Timberwolves. The fan base is ignited with our Timberwolves banter. I can't, Max Fuller, tell you how far outside my comfort zone I am in going anything that isn't Minnesota Wild or National Hockey League related, but we're trying.
We're trying.
You're guiding me. You're holding my hand through this conversation.
We're starting with the training wheels. We're going down the kiddie slide. We're not going into the deep end or anything. We're keeping it shallow.
The bunny hill, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I got my training wheels on. Here's a good example. So into the text line at 64686, I get this one about slow-mo. Who's slow-mo?
That's Kyle Anderson.
Kyle Anderson. All right. So this texter says, hey, Maxwell, why slow-mo? I feel he's our Achilles heel down the stretch, doesn't do anything well, but plays so much. He doesn't get it. Slow, poor shooter, poor defender, poor free throw shooter, can't drive, create. What am I missing? Turns the ball over, just stagnant when they run anything through him. That texter, I don't think is a fan of slow-mo.
Well, listen, slow-mo was an integral part of this team last season. He's, a grizzled veteran that the Wolves don't always have a lot of on their bench, but he's been struggling this season. And it's almost like in baseball or golf or whatever, the yips, it kind of feels like it's mostly mental now. He's been struggling and he knows it, so he's not being as aggressive as he once was. He's second guessing about shots. And the ball's just not going through the basket. And but we can't. Kyle Anderson is an important part of this team. And when he's clicking, he just raises the Timberwolves ceiling that much more. And look, this is a deep Timberwolves team, but I'm not sure who would replace Kyle Anderson's minutes, because Shake Milton has also been struggling as well. Troy Brown Jr. has been he's been amazing over the last couple of weeks when he stepped up when Ant was out, and he seems to be getting some more minutes because of that. But I listen, Kyle Anderson is he's a playmaker when he's on, and lately he's just been struggling, and he just has to get out of his own head. I think just one breakout game could set him back on the right path.
Slow-mo is an important part of the team, according to you. So, too, I would assume, is Cat, Karl Anthony Towns. And I think Neil in Arden Hills agrees with me that he's reined in his complaining a little bit this year. I saw him a couple of times where he rolled his eyes last night, and he wanted to blow up, but he kind of pulled it back in.
Right.
And I saw that a few times, especially the game that I watched last night as they ended up beating the Spurs. Neil in Arden Hills says, is that a result of winning, or can you contribute to a player like Mike Connolly, who has a senior voice on that team and is saying to Karl, you're an important part of this team, knock that garbage off?
Well, honestly, ever since Cat came back from his injury last season, I noticed that the arguments, the debates with the refs had kind of quelled down a little bit, and it seems like something that he just did himself. I actually tried to ask him about it during Timberwolves Media Day. Of course, he didn't give me a real answer about it. He just said he's trying to improve every day. But I think that's, along the lines of the truth. He seems like he's made it a point to stop always arguing with the refs and just focus on the game. And look, he's an aggressive player. I joked about him looking like a prime Adrian Peterson last night because the way he was just barreling through the paint. But that you can't take that aggressiveness away from Karl. He's a 3-level scorer. Whenever he just gets relegated to just becoming a shooter, or if people want him to just be in the paint, like Chuck and Shaq are always saying, that's not who he is, and that aggressiveness is a part of his game. So sometimes he's going to get into foul trouble, but I think he's been incredible on both ends of the floor this year. He got off to a really rocky start offensively, but he's just shown that. Look, when Anthony Edwards was out, a lot of people were calling for Cat to get traded, ship him off. We don't need him. But he's proved numerous times over the last several seasons how valuable he is to this team, but especially with Anthony Edwards out. Cat and Ant, there's been times, one of the things that is kind of a downside of the Wolves this season, there's been times where it seems like it's just Cat and Ant that are the primary scorers, and there's not a whole lot going on outside of that duo. So Cat is could the Wolves be successful without Cat? Sure, but he raises this team's ceiling that much more, and he's a real important part of the reason that we are the number 1 seed in the Western Conference. And defensively this season, he's been lights out.
Yeah, I want to see where this team goes with this 3-headed monster, and then throw in the otother bit parts too, like a Mike Conley, a Naz Reid, and Jaden McDaniels. And maybe we'll get the update on him from Alan Horton here if he knows anything new, but he's been out for a little while too, hasn't he?
Yeah, he's been out for a couple weeks now, and it's you almost kind of forget about it because
But he's an important role player too, right?
Yeah, he's the best defender on this Wolves team, which is already the number 1 defensive team in the NBA. And like I've said, they've made it through, but De'Aaron Fox, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, last night Devin Vassell. These guards are tearing the Wolves up, and these are the type of players that would normally be assigned to Jaden McDaniels. We need him back so they can get even better defensively. And he had actually struggled with foul troubles earlier this season as well when he was in. So we really haven't had a chance to see how much his offensive game has improved. So I just think this Wolves team is already firing on almost all cylinders. So when Jaden McDaniels comes back, look out.
So now, on one hand, I didn't know who Slow-Mo was, but I just dropped Jaden McDaniels into the conversation out of nowhere.
You're like a rube.
In the back of your mind, when you heard from Chad Abbott, Falness is filling in, we're going to try to talk some Timberwolves, you're like, oh my God, what a disaster! But I'm paddling. I'm dog paddling here, trying to keep my head above water.
Right, we could take the water wingies off. Maybe take some of the training wheels off. You're a good old fashioned rube right here. Yeah. Can I get a howl out of you? Can I get a hootie hoo or something?
Hootie hoo.
Oh, there we go.
Was that good?
Yeah, we'll build up to it.
Wait till I work on my fro. You and I are going to be the fro brothers there, and I'm going to take selfies with Marnie and Rosie. It's going to be awesome.
You're going to take your shirt off too and wear the kimono?
No, we leave that for Ron Johnson. We're not doing that. This might be the best texture I've ever heard. Papa Taco. You know Papa Taco?
No, I've been referred to as Papa Taco in some of my past lives, but I don't know a Papa Taco.
And I don't know what that means, but I'm sure it's awesome. But he brings up a good point. At what point do you start looking past just being happy being the number 1 seed in the Western Conference? There's an opportunity here for this team for the first time really in France. I know you had some good bit parts back in the day, and I'm not downplaying Kevin Garnett and some of the other players that have been on this team over the course of history, but this is the best team, without a doubt, in the history of this franchise. Everyone stays healthy. You got to be looking at more than just being happy with where you are in December. You got to push this to new limits, right?
Yeah, 100%. But I do think Wolves fans and Minnesota sports fans in general, we're all so thirsty for that championship, that's all we can think about. We can't have fun during regular seasons anymore. Even the Vikings last season, they had 1 million one-score games, and still, because it didn't end in a Super Bowl, everybody says the season's a failure. That's not true. We can have fun along the way. The ride is fun during the ride, not just when you get off and you're safe. The Wild thing is fun when you got your hands in the air and you're at the top, you're going down. So I think we should enjoy it while it lasts. But of course, the Wolves are a legit contender, and if they get that, number 1, number 2, one of those top 3 seeds, it's a whole different ballgame from when we've seen them in the playoffs before, where they're the A seed and they're fighting up. They're playing teams like the Nuggets or the top teams in the Western Conference, whereas opposed to right now, they'd be playing a team like the Lakers, who, they have LeBron, but they've been vastly inconsistent this season, or a team like the Rockets, who, they were one of the worst teams in the NBA this season. So the Wolves, it's going to be a whole different ballgame for them. And with this defense, that's what really gives them the chance to be contenders for the title, because you're never going to be too far out of a game when you have a defense like this. Last night was yet another game that they held an opposing team to under 100 points, which, again, I say this all the time, but in the modern NBA, that is absurd. I don't think there's a single team, even the worst scoring team in the NBA, averages over 100 points per night. So the Wolves holding teams under 100 points, and to the terrible shooting that they've subjected teams to, it's been incredible. So I don't think that they're really ever going to be too far out of a game to not be in it. I think this Wolves team is legit, and I think the national media is starting to see that as well. We're starting to hear some people like Bill Simmons, even Stephen A. Smith, and the people on Sports Center and ESPN. They have to pay attention.
We're over here, cute little program.
Right, yeah. And it's not just like before, where the Wolves have gotten off to good starts, but they didn't finish this game or that game. They didn't come through, and it's just us being homers saying, well, they could be good if they put it all together. No, they're legitimately good right now, and they've proved it against some of the best in the NBA. Look, they beat the Oklahoma City Thunder, who are a top 3 team in the Western Conference. They beat the Denver Nuggets, the reigning champions. They beat the Boston Celtics. They've beaten a lot of the top teams already. So I think they've proven it to us that they're the real deal. And we can have fun along the way. Yeah, it's a long season. So we got to look forward to that in the playoffs, and I'm sure that'll be fun. But I think we should have fun along the way as well.
It's nice that the Timberwolves are finally getting their respect. You know what is a lack of respect? This texter saying I'm way better at talking basketball than I am at program password. What's wrong with you? I'm 1-0 in my last 1 attempts. And you want to talk about
you
bad.
Got to win?
I did. Gorg and I beat Common and Muss. And that's the only reason I'm bringing Muss in here, so I can feel good about myself. I love when Muss plays these games, because I know I'm not going to be the worst person in the room at these little contests. Program password, initials, whatever that backwards music song they do with church. He's bad at all that stuff. Yeah, and I love the guy. And we're going to have Muss in here, and we will turn our attention to Vikings, and that's a good reason to have Muss in. He fills my role, like what I do with the Wild, he does with the Vikings, so it'll be awesome to check in with him. And there's not a better person on earth, except when it comes to these game shows. He's so bad.
He's the worst.
And that's why I love when I see him in the room. Apparently, now this is what Brandon Molesky tells me, that Gorg had the opportunity to pick any of the 3 of us. He could have picked me, Common, or Muss. I'm not picking Muss. If you have a gun to my head, I wouldn't pick me either. I think of those 3, I'd pick Common, but Gorg picked me. Why Gorg got to pick, I don't know. But we had a little bit of symmetry, a little chemistry going on in that one. We had a couple of hockey ones. One of them was Moose, and he threw out Foligno. For your information, that's the nickname of Marcus Foligno.
Of course, I know.
Well, I don't know slow-mo. I don't know if you know
Foligno.
Moose.
He's the alternate captain of the Minnesota Wild.
You.
I'm a Wild guy. I'm a hockey guy.
I thought about going toe-to-toe with you if I could throw out Wild trivia versus you throwing out basketball trivia, but I think you'd probably kill me.
I'd dunk on you.
I think you would.
I'd hit you with a clapper, as hockey people would say.
You're a well-rounded sports individual, and there's no doubt about that. I know we're going to talk to Alan Horton here at the top of the hour, but let's turn our attention real quick for the next 5 minutes or so to the Minnesota Vikings, because they've got a clutch game coming up, coming out of the bye week. There was some trepidation at who would be under center. They're turning back to Joshua Dobbs. I don't know if that's the right answer. It's probably the lesser of 3 evils. You don't know exactly what you have in the other 2. You know what you have in Joshua Dobbs. I didn't like what I saw from him on Monday night against the Chicago Bears. Vikings lose a very winnable game. Holy smokes. I don't know that Brian Flores and the defense could do anything more to give them an opportunity to win. on Monday Night Football, and Joshua Dobbs turned the ball over 4 times. Is it all on him? No. But that's something that can't happen come Sunday. Another very winnable game against the now Las Vegas Raiders. Going out there, coming off the bye. You've had an opportunity to work with this young man for an extra week. You got to get some results, and he's got to be good. And now he gets JJ back, able to throw him, and I can't wait to see what this mobile quarterback does with an opportunity to have that extra target as Justin Jefferson. What do you think there, Maxwell? Did they make the right decision in turning to Joshua Dobbs as their starting quarterback coming out of the bye?
Well, it's like you said, it's kind of the lesser of 3 evils here. I mean, not to, disrespect anybody's game, but Joshua Dobbs said he was awful. He had 4 interceptions and could have had 5 against a Chicago Bears team that has underperformed in almost every single way.
They didn't score a touchdown in that game. That's what's so aggravating. And again, I'm watching this as a fan. I'm sitting on my couch and I'm thinking, oh my God, you have the opportunity to win this and it should be so easy. The defense is serving it up on a platter for you for this terrible Chicago Bears team. And the Bears couldn't score a touchdown, and yet they still win 12-10 on Monday Night Football with the season on the line. I mean, it's not like their season comes to a crashing halt now, but 2 straight losses coming out of resurrecting their season, and then that one on Monday Night Football. As a fan, I'm watching that, and I'm thinking, man, that is so disappointing.
Yeah, especially knowing that the Packers are on your heels as well as the L.A.
Which is
Rams.
Another awful thought. If you get caught by the Packers and how bad their season started, you think it was bad for the Vikings.
Oh, man,
but they're reborn as well. He does now. He didn't before. I take him, no question.
Yeah, for sure.
In an instant.
But I think Justin Jefferson being back just changes the whole game. I mean, not only for Joshua Dobbs, but for all the other wide receivers and pass catchers as well. I mean, Jordan Addison is all of a sudden going to get less attention. TJ Hawkinson, he improves everybody's chances of doing better and playing better. So I just think Justin Jefferson is the key here. And the Raiders, I mean, they're not the best against the pass from what I've read. They don't have the best defense here, and they're a wildly inconsistent team, and they have been for years.
Very
now.
winnable.
Yeah, 100%.
Going to Vegas. The problem is you're going to Vegas, and there's so many distractions, mostly for the broadcast team and those guys in their fancy little hotel there on the Strip. Yeah. It sounded awesome though. They did a great job. The power trip, and I can't wait to hear what PA does. And Jared sets up there at Buffalo Wild Wings tomorrow for the Friday football feast. I know they're going to have an awesome time, but there are distractions when you go to Vegas. I'll tell you, this is what I love about Vikings football. I can watch them as a rube. I don't have to worry about the X's and O's. With the Wild and watching the NHL, I'm watching it through a different eye. But even watching the Timberwolves, I get a chance to be a fan, and that's what I love about the Vikings. I can get mad at the decisions, at the turnovers, at 4 costly errors against a very bad Chicago Bears team, to see this team drop 2 in a row and, fall to 6-6, and now keep the hopes alive of the Green Bay Packers, probably see your opportunity to win the division and catch the Detroit Lions go by the wayside, but everything's still on the table for them, much like the Timberwolves, much like your Minnesota Wild. The whole season is still right there for the taking for our purple people eaters, and hopefully they can get it done, especially Sunday. Kickoff starts at 3:05. You got the extended pregame starting at 1 o'clock right here on FM 100.3 The Fan. Lots of Vikings conversation coming up next hour, including Mike Mussman, studio host for the Vikings Radio Network. Later on, we're going to check in with former Vikings quarterback Tommy Kramer. What's he think about the state of his Minnesota Vikings franchise? We'll check in with him, but coming up next, the voice of Timberwolves basketball, Orton, is next on KFAN.